Hey YouTube, it's finally starting to warm up a little bit here in lovely southern Indiana, and so I thought I'd get out here and kind of start talking about what I'm going to try to do, what I am going to try to do with these LED lights that I want to make for my wife's tank. Now, I have purchased some flower pots that I think will serve as a canister for these lights to sit in. I may have to drill some holes around the top to release heat. I'm kind of stealing from Joey's drop lights that he made, only I'm going to use LEDs. And these are a buck a piece for these little flower pots. Now the flower pots, the actual canisters that these lights are supposed to go in are about 50 bucks, and they're metal can lights for a ceiling. I bought some electric cord, an adapter plug that will allow me to plug it in. I bought a dimmer switch and a can of Rust-Oleum satin black finish spray paint. I've gotten some anti-short bushings that are critical to keep the wire from rubbing against the side of the metal or the plastic, as the case may be, to keep the wire from shorting out. I've gotten a box. Got to have something to put this dimmer switch in. And I've gotten various connectors and some super glue, gel, and a switch plate cover for the dimmer switch itself. I picked up a roll of electrical tape. All in all, I've spent about, I'm going to guess in the area of $70 for the lights, which were $30. The dimmer switch was $22. I tried to get a good one that's for variable lights and goes up to 600 watts. I think that'll be enough to hold this. Now, the piece of metal that I intend on using for my framework, it should hang something like this. I'm not sure you can see that all so well. It's basically a part from my old shower frame. And I will be using the top to run my wires, and I will mount my dimmer switch on one side, either like that or like that. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to end up mounting it like this, perhaps even up on top to keep it from... So I'm going to have to mount the dimmer switch, run my extension cord for my power coming in off the power strip. Then I'm going to have to drill holes through the top of the metal for the wire to go through, put the bushings in. Then I'm going to have to mount, first install the bushing, whatever drilling I'm going to have to do to let heat escape. And then I'm going to mount that. I'm going to mount each of these lights inside of these, so I'll have to have all the electrical connections made before I attempt to secure these to the flower pots. So, in a sense, what you're going to have hanging off of the pendant wire, which will simply be the electrical cord that I got, will be something that looks like this. It's a can that will hold the top of the light and cover up the electrical connection, and I'll have to glue it to the bottom and then spray paint everything that's on top, so that from the top all you're going to see is black. And the only concern that I have is heat generated off of the upper side of the LED light, but LED lights don't generate a lot of heat. So I'm not sure that it is going to really be an issue for me. Now I have to pull the brackets off of these things. Let's grab a Phillips. That's a little better. And it's going to be a fairly long process to get all these done. But there's no time like the present for starting. My wife and I are both discovering that that the Marineland light that came with the tank is not going to be functional for plants. It just doesn't have the strength par that will allow for the plants to grow like they need to grow. I think she wants highlight, but I think she will learn after a while that highlight is going to require a lot of trimming, a lot of work on her part to keep up with the plants themselves. It's almost as much trouble to have the plants grow too much as it is for them to not grow enough. But I've pretty much got my plan laid out. I'm going to have to drill holes in the aluminum frame that I've got from the shower door. I'm going to have to drill holes in the pots, plant pots, to let the electricity in. And I've got to figure out some way to keep the wire. I bought a pretty heavy gauge wire. I'm not sure if the gauge is actually listed on this stuff. It may be, and I just can't see it because of the light. But I went with a pretty heavy gauge wire. It's fairly thick. It's double stranded. I'll have to add a piece for my ground from the attachable plug-in and run it to my dimmer switch at least. I probably need to run it to each individual light as well. And that's going to happen in a dimmer switches of old left a lot to be desired. They'd buzz if they weren't wired up correctly. They'd overheat if they were blocking too much power or having too much power go through them. But I think that in this day and age, they've designed them well enough so that it's not going to be as big an issue. I'm going to get a little piece of wood here and draw you a diagram of what this situation is going to look like. Now my electrical diagram wire skills are not going to be functional. So we're going to have a plug that will plug into power. We'll have a ground wire. We'll have a neutral wire. We'll have a hot wire. And then we'll add a switch. Let's see, I think I remember the switch symbol is like that. And our neutral wire will bypass the switch and carry on to each of the three lights. And it will have to be pigtailed to allow a pigtail to drop down to the neutral and another pigtail move on to the and then on our hot, it will connect to one wire of the switch, and another wire will come out and bring us a hot that comes to a switch, pigtail, another wire nut with a pigtail, and on to a third connection to the light. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this very well, but these are our three lights, three pendant lights hanging down. This is our dimmer with our hot wire coming out off the plug to one pole of the dimmer switch, and our hot wire coming off the other side of the dimmer switch to a three pigtail connection, wire nut, one dropping down to the light, one going to the next connection, wire nut connection with a pigtail dropping out of it to the light and on to the third light. And our neutral bypasses the switch, comes to a wire nut, excuse me, with a pigtail dropping neutral to our light, and a pigtail onto the next wire nut with a pigtail dropping to the light, and then the third pigtail coming to the light itself. And that's a pretty basic diagram, but it shows you how this has to be wired. And that's kind of a critical thing because it's got to be wired correctly. Now, the dimmer switch itself has 4 wires coming off of it. The green is ground. We know what that one is. The red will be the power coming out of the dimmer switch, going hot to the rest of the connections. The black will connect to the power coming in hot from the plug-in. And this 4th wire is red and white, and it is designed if you're going to have a 3-way switch included. So we'll just cap that off, cut it short, and cap it off, and the rest of it will be jammed into this little box with one of the knockouts knocked out of it, and we will wire on from there. I think the plug-in end on the that will connect to the wires is pretty self-explanatory. You don't really need how to connect wires. I'm going to use glue, super glue gel for my gluing my flower pot to the actual light itself. And I will, once I've got all the holes drilled, and I'm probably going to drill some holes in the top side or cut them out with a Dremel tool to allow heat to escape. Because even though I know these don't get that hot, the idea of having an inside of a plastic cup, basically, kind of makes me wonder if I don't need to give some way for heat to get out. I'll have to drill a hole in the top for the wire to drop down off the frame and hold the whole thing in place, and then use the glue to glue it to the thing itself. I'll have to have all of my wires connected. All these LED lights were made to put in an old can light that is in a ceiling. They're designed for it, so they come with a light bulb fixture screw-in adapter that leads to the connector for the light itself. I'll have to cut these off, connect them to my wire dropping down from my frame. And I'm going to need to figure out some way to make the connection inside of the pot, hold the weight of the light and the pot itself, which it's not very heavy. I'd say maybe an ounce total, maybe an ounce and a half. It shouldn't be that much. It shouldn't be an issue, but I do need to come up with a good knot or the wire wrapped around something and held in place in such a way as I can get a good measurement from the amount of wire hanging off of this frame. The lights will hang off the frame, and I think it's going to hang maybe that far from the frame, and they will be free swinging. But I'm going to set it up so that the bottom of the light is right at the top of the tank. I may have to figure out some way I may have to leave a little bit of a gap to keep it from blocking me from getting in the tank and cleaning and things like that. But I'm going to hang. My thought is that I will hang them at equal distance. One on this end, one in the middle, and one on this end. And try to get them as close to the top of the tank glass as possible so that I don't know, maybe when I do this frame I'll need to set it some way where it can be tilted upwards and out of the way. Or I'll just have to take down whatever my brackets are. I've got to figure out some kind of mounting bracket to go from the end of this piece to mount it directly to the wall. And it's pretty thin in the inside, so it's going to require some thought process to get it to function properly. But I think it will turn out to be an intensely bright light. I think it will light that 75 up very well, perhaps too well, which is why I got the dimmer switch, just in case we need to dial it back down a little. It may be so bright that it lights up the whole dining room, and I know we don't want that at all times, so a dimmer switch will be handy. Good luck, YouTube.